So I've been playing The Missing.
Fellas, we have a situation on our hands. As it turns out, a small platoon of rogue SJWs have kidnapped a Japanese developer called Swery69, forcing him to change how he makes his games. Where he used to rely on the gay joke character trope and the fat man shoving stacks of pizza down his throat in an epic display of male dominance, they have now forced him to make a game about lesbians.
And said lesbians are having a campy campfire with girl talk written by Only When JJ Awake,
Emily?
the Emily are gone. So what better thing to do than to keep walking to the right, as this is basically one of them cinematic platformers. You know, like Another World, Prince of Perversia, Abe, Inside. Games not really about jumpage or dexterity, but more so about solving puzzles, having a heavy plot presence or atmosphere, and usually also a shit ton of stiffness and jank. Euro jank back in the day, and indie and sweary jank in current year. The only big diff being, I guess, is that most of these games tend to be kind of self-serious, and here the first thing you do is pick up a giant tree donut. Though the puzzles and story stuff does still stand. I mean, JJ finds her dead self and Emily being chased by a giant shadow child, and then she gets dunked on by thunder and... Oh. Wow, that's actually weirdly graphic. Good news though, bro, is that she's brought back to life and can proceed to pretty much die and regen her way about these puzzles using dismemberment to chuck an arm in a box to drop it down so she can reach the donut. Or like, get her ass fucking busted by a giant tree monkey altering the pull of gravity, don't question it. Shit's physics-based, pretty much. If that worries you though, assuming the game to require being super polished for that to even remotely having a chance at working out, then you can take solace in the fact that many of the debris, moving objects, boxes and rocks will wig out and clip out on just about everything, and that of course the FMV-based clouds will play at a different frame rate than everything else. The audio will be mixed quite badly, with many sound effects distorting or simply not playing out properly, and that the frame rate overall will utterly shit itself from time to time too. It's totally a sweary game through and through. The fonts, the spooky and uncanny vibes with the voice acting that's never quite resi bad, but still stilted enough to be off-putting, the big movie talk, and the I did research on this, but I also just kinda love the image that I have in my head, more representation of American culture are all present and unaccounted for. Like, everything will fit, but it'll still feel like something's wrong, as is the case with this opening text scroll.
A remote island in North America, just off the coast of Maine. Filled with artifacts left over from the good old days, this island has the power to awaken the formative memories of all its visitors.
Not to mention the campy campfire country music girl musings.
No, you always say that.
Really? Oh no.
Girls totally talk like that. Sweary knows. Hell, even the lighting and the uncannily empty forestation soaked in black are at this point part of what's quickly becoming his own signature style.
And it was here, crawling up these stairs as a burning torso in a dark cave all alone, that I began to realize something.
Cinematic platformers aren't platformers. They're just adventure games where you can jump, maybe. A really stiff jump too, where you'll first need to run in a direction to jump in it, as you can't change trajectory midair and also wait. And running in said trajectory can also be tricky, seeing as JJ first needs to turn around to slowly start running like a person, nor is the walking speed in general really on the level of a meat man or shovel child. I can see why climbing is done automatically Zelda style is what I'm saying. Although you can crawl and go fully prone, which is an option that all games should have. I mean, look at Max over here. this dude clearly needs to go prone. But yeah, it's a puzzle game. You run left as the story and atmosphere happen until you enter a room of sorts that prohibits you from doing just that, essentially forcing you to find a way through. Now, while every one of these rooms will offer its own meme, there are a few key pillars to the puzzle, so to say, like throwing your limbs or rocks at things to make fall, using the weight of objects like a big box or corpse parts on Seesaw, pushing said boxes to reach places like a rope with an adjustable pulley, fire, it sets you to burn, and also just general physics and shiftable gravity. And naturally, the game will continuously expand upon these pillars as we go on by using them in various situations with perhaps a one-off gimmick or two thrown in for good measure. For instance, you could end up having to get yourself blasted through a wall so you can push a box to the ceiling, which is now the floor, so you can reach this cubby hole where you can then regen to reverse gravity, crank the crank to lower a hook, letting you pin the door to the floor that falls closed when the gravity switch you can pass through. Or, say, setting yourself on fire to burn some vines or light up a dark place, which will then also have water, which will put out the fire, so need to avoid good. You can't die, by the way. Sure, J. Jonah Jameson and the missing Mingus can regen her ass at the push of a butt, but should you get mullered to the point where even your lone rolling head'll get smashed, then it is back to a checkpoint. Usually right outside the puzzle room. Which is cool, as this limits the amount of limbs one can throw or how tiny you can get, so you wouldn't be able to utterly break every single puzzle ever. The game itself does that just fine on its own. While most of it is really fun and rewarding just due to the breath of death and eureka moments alone and other shit I will get into in a bit, there are also times where the jank will get in your way. I mean, there's these owls, for example, who trigger when sound. White owls need to be for puzzle, but the black ones will attack you, and of course you can only stomach so much. Which is fine, mechanic good, it requires things and stuff, it's cool. However, the square button, it picks things up. It allows you to push stuff for cranks. And it lets you call out for Emily.
Where are you?
I was going to pick up the rock to scare off one or two so I could jump across again, but, you know. When that previously mentioned turning and walking momentum comes into play too, it can get pretty hard to pinpoint position yourself for maximum pickupage, which isn't fine. Especially when there's all of these shoulder buttons going unused that could have done the callouts instead. And sure, you can rebind controls, it's just that call and interact will always be linked to the same button no matter what, so shit ain't fixed shit. Also, some of the pillars of puzzle in general can be kinda meh. Twisting cranks to lower ropes can take a dang ass while, as does sliding around these cutouts for this thing. Not to mention slowly crawling cause legs broke and things can start to feel kinda grating when repeated too often. Making up for it, however, is just how strange shit is. Even for Swery. You'll be walking through a graveyard, burying corpses in exchange for donuts and setting yourself on fire when suddenly you start hearing babies and like ice cream truck music. So you go to investigate, only thus forcing you to navigate this bitch as a rolling, sentient meat clump. Shit's actually kinda graphic, not gonna lie. I mean, it doesn't really show anything. Shadows, filters, and outlines help hide the gore, nor do the art style and camera really shove it in your face either, but in that, you are kinda left to fill shit in with whatever sick shit you think is going on. With, of course, the audio helping you along through pain screams, squishy, meaty sounds, bone crushing, and my favorite, JJ falling over and crying whilst trying to hop on her one remaining leg only to break it with her own weight. I legit felt that uncomfortable sting going through my whole body as my nerve ending stood up like, yo, No. And hey, if eternal suffering ain't enough to get you excited to play, then many of the unlocks surely will. Character art, music, costumes, things that usually don't really grab my attention at all due to being locked away in some extras menu unlocked after playing, do work here as you get shit in small chunks as rewards for finding secrets and are able to access it from the in-game phone right away at all times. For real, like look at the layering on this dude. Shit's nuts. What's mega interesting about these though is that the unlocks will often work in tandem with how the story progresses. You'll see the creepy sword thing for the first time, not quite knowing what to make of it other than run away! But then BAM! Art, so you can see shit good. Plus, the majority of the story takes place in texts, which will unlock in a similar way as they'll be from JJ's past, showing the interactions with her friends, Mom and Emily leading up to her being here, which, I mean, is kind of what it's all about anyway. The story. Now though, I guess would be the time to point out that Swery's writing has always been somewhere in between legit really cool, emotionally gripping and funny, and unintentionally funny, badly written and logicless. The smartphone text, for example, are legit really charming, and the characters are as well as JJ. You get to learn about what movies, music, and food they're all into, and how different from each other they are while still being part of the same circle, thus making for big dynamics. And all of that for what is essentially just a bunch of text, JPEGs, and emojis. Shit's cute. Right up until they drop the term sucksores. You can haunt me with a ghost plushie called FK
In the coffee.
all you want, but you're making it really hard to look past the Doge memes, Swery. Things can also feel a bit on the nose as well. One of JJ's friends, a badass punk girl who take no shits, be all like, "My teacher hates my piercings, but I love how they look. People who judge others based on their appearances are dumb." And like, yeah, they are. But shit ain't exactly subtle writing now, is it? There's better ways to telegraph that as. Now it just kind of feels like Swery really wanted to go all night out in the woods rebellious progressive teens on him, only he's 45 and drunk. But where things then get clever again is when that shit recurs later, with this girl speaking about how she saw some guy bullying a cat but was too scared to intervene, only for this nose-piercing hero to save the day. Besides this, giving depth to both girls, I don't think I would have remembered that piercing detail at all had it not been introduced in such a clumsily memorable way. Also, as on the schnoz as it is, he did make an actual effort to talk about progressive rebellious teen shit in ways that you don't typically see. JJ's mom texting her all ignorant as fuck, talking about how she wants her to be in a normal relationship and that genderless bathrooms are bad because God. It's not something I can entirely relate to, as my parents' peers and environments are super nice and cool and open to all of my dumb bullshit, but from what I can tell, the story is definitely touching people. Queer people who may or may not have had as much luck with their parents as I have, instead growing up in a conservative hellscape, forced into a sedated, dated, closeted lifestyle with all manner of traumas and physical issues following in tow. And while this game might kinda be shoving these things in there like Swery just learned about them, not in like a cynical way, mind you, but in a, I was recently moved by this, but I also don't really know much about it. I am drunk. It is still handled in an incredibly clever and effective way. Thing B is that it doesn't just include these themes in a poetic or abstract manner that tingles your emotional and psychological bits, making you think things over without knowing that this is what you're thinking about, but also in a very forward and down to shitty earth sort of way, where its clunky writing works in its advantage because, well, it's just not wasting your time with heavy symbolism as many stories of the sort would often do. Things are pretty straight up, hard to misinterpret, and thus impossible to deny or not confront in any which way. Not going to spoil exactly where it takes all of this, obviously, but it's a strikingly direct and poignant tale regardless of if it parallels your life or not, with twists and subversions on both the gameplay and story fronts, tying the two together excellently and thematically in ways that I haven't seen a game do before. It's, it's pretty alright.
Gentlemen, I am moved. Swery is still the absolute big dick Don. I'm canceling the operation. All hail Swery!